All right, good morning, guys and ladies. Let me know if you can't hear me. I see a nice green bar of my speech, so I think we're good to go. Guys, welcome to the Hurley Investments Trade Findings and Adjustments of this is, let's see, February 9th. Let me just get this saved and we'll be good to go. All right. So, just to backtrack like we usually do, what did we talk about last time? We talked a little bit about Meta and their earnings report. They did ridiculously well. Baidu had a big jump in it. And of course, in a minute, I'd like to talk about Disney. They had good earnings yesterday, huge earnings per share beat. But let's double check and see where Meta has gone. So basically, sideways since that huge jump. Basically traveled sideways. What have we done with Meta? Well, we took off, I think we had 150s, 150 puts. They might have been lower. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Might have been a lower strike than my memory is telling me. And we took those off because it was a ridiculous jump. And then yesterday, got puts back on at 185 strike to protect profits. Just wanted to hold on. It's way overbought, and I'm worried on Meta. You can see here, if I can zoom in, this enormous gap might try to be filled to some degree. Sometimes that happens, a big gap in the price, and sometimes it's the following thing that happens is the stock price kind of comes back down to fill that gap, and then it continues on higher. So just in that case, we got some protection back on for Meta. Baidu, kind of a similar deal, had that big jump up on this day, I think, or maybe it was this one. That would be February 2nd. So that was last time. That was our big jump. Um, Baidu has had several of those days where it just kind of jumps up and then kind of comes down, jumps up. This one jumped up a lot, but there's days where that kind of backs off a little bit. Kind of these couple weeks where it backs off a little bit and then jumps up, backs off, kind of comes up a little bit sideways, jumps up big, comes down a few days, jumps up big. Kind of the story with Baidu. And something interesting that I noticed as well over the last couple days, which was kind of like a duh moment for me, Maybe you guys can see it too, though. You're looking at this chart. What is a technical pattern that you guys notice? I'll give you a hint. It starts down here and goes up to here. Obviously, there are several things you could say, but what do you guys notice? And there's no wrong answers. I am kind of looking at something specific, but what do you guys think? What do you see from this chart? William says it's bullish. Yes, sir. That's true. What else do you notice? Definitely bullish, still on a bullish run, even with all these big fallbacks. They've all just kind of been small, what is the word? Small, man, it was on the tip of my tongue. But they have been small little pullbacks to consolidate, I guess is the word, and build a base and then jump higher. But let me see if I can point a couple things out here, here, almost here, but not quite. I'm going to say here, 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 and here, and probably this one as well today. But let me see if I can't help out a little bit. Something like that. This is what I noticed the other day. What's been happening over the last 3 months or so for Baidu. There is a pretty strong trend line. And what's also cool is that as I went over to FinViz that has nice technical charts and trend lines already drawn out, you can kind of see the same thing, that it's followed this trend, kind of come back to touch it a couple times, not quite a couple days ago, but very close. And I think you close enough that you could make an argument for all of these, even though they're a little bit higher. But I would say that's a pretty strong support trend line. So what does that mean? Well, what that means to me is that we have a diagonal support line. So every time, basically, that comes back to test that support line, that trend line, we're getting a little bit of help bouncing off of that. Let me see. Another thing you might notice is they have a 20-day simple moving average, or probably exponential moving average. Oh, they said simple SMA. Kind of has followed that same direction. So we do have that as well. And let me see if I have let's use this chart. And I'm going to do some different moving averages and see where they land us. So we used 5 and 20. Exponential just means it kind of moves faster. But you can kind of see the same thing there. Once that 5-day EMA, exponential moving average, crosses above the 20-day, it is a bullish indicator. But technically, if we're being technical about technicals, we really need 3 crossovers. So here's crossover 1, and then the RSI up here, crossover 2, above that midline right there of the RSI, and then down here at the MACD, MACD right here, and you could add the 4th one, of course, with the Williams %R, which is kind of a faster moving RSI type indicator. So we have 4 ridiculously good bullish indicators, and we have yet for it to be switched over to a bearish. So what you'll see, if I can erase those real quick, unless we get technically three of those crossovers again back to the downside, we're still in a bullish run. So you can see there's a couple times where the MACD has kind of crossed back and forth here, but our 5 and our 20 have not crossed. Every single time that stock has touched that 20-day, it's bounced off of it. You can say the same thing for this RSI. It's come back to a couple times to touch that midline and has gone back up. That's all just good indication of a strong bullish run. And for Baidu, we got $150, I think. Let me see if I've got it all right here. Baidu 160s. So we got 160 strike Baidu puts back on way up here. So we added 160s. And what would be your guess as to why we added 160s? Why did we, when this is on such a bullish tear, and has been for some time, why would we put Baidu puts back on? Let's see if you guys have been listening. I'll give you a hint. We already had puts on, but they were way down here at 140, and we had to roll them up. And I apologize, this is a bit of a trick question. But what do you guys think? Why would we roll those 140s up to 160s? Don't be shy. I'll even leave your name out of it. Just tell me what you think. What's the first thing you think? What do we use puts for? What is the most important thing to protect for? William says earnings. Nailed it. Thank you, William. So it's kind of maybe it seems like an obvious or silly point to make, but so many stocks have already had their earnings. So many, have already started to make their reactions to their earnings. And for something like Baidu that doesn't report until later, I think they're in end of this month. It hasn't been confirmed as far as the date, but they're usually a little later than everything else, being a Chinese stock. And so it can be tempting to, not tempting, but it can be easy to lose track of that and kind of get caught up in you know wanting to let things run, seeing everything else have their earnings, and then forgetting that Baidu still has to have protection on for their earnings. But we're in this time frame here where they're still going up significantly, and so we got to have the protection on. However, we've got to figure out the best strike price and the best level that we can have protection on without rolling up too many times that it's just costing us through, several weeks, if not a month of time. So luckily, most of this is all amazing profits. We had 140s on, I think, and it just made sense with this ridiculous jump up here to 160. Hey, let's roll those up to 160. We're touching overbought. Every other time we've kind of just touched overbought, come down, touched overbought, come down. Yeah, and maybe we'll only come down to like, I don't know, 145 maybe. But you've got to admit, 160 is a wonderful price to be protecting Baidu. Let me see if I can go out a little further in time and show you what I mean. So where's 160? about right here. You could make a little better argument for like 156, which is probably why it didn't stay up at 160 for too long. But we still have in this range quite a lot of movement. So quite a lot of, we could say here, here, only lasted short amount of time up there. Closer to here, this looked like a support for a couple of weeks before it fell. Resistance, came back down, broke through it. A little bit of support there, tried to bounce for a few weeks, fell down. Resistance again. Maybe you could argue this is resistance up there. Let me see where this lies. So 167. This is all kind of within that range. A little further out in time and the numbers get a little more blurry, right? So 160, we'll call it 160 to 65, 157 to 165. So in that range, there's a lot of trading happening, a lot of buy orders, it looks like, happening at those prices. And that's it. And it's a round number. We'll see where it goes, obviously. But what I think will happen is something similar here where it hits this number, kind of struggles to get over a 120 for a while and kind of goes down and sideways a little bit. But obviously, we'll see. And I'll have to correct this. We rolled to protect better for earnings. Obviously, we've talked about sometimes we like to, if we really feel good that a stock is going to do great on their earnings, we'll let the stock run to some degree and not roll it up, not roll our puts up to protect higher at the money, just to save a little cost there and have some more profit as it runs up after earnings. So that's still kind of the case with Baidu, meaning that we expect it to do well. But 140 when a stock is trading up at 160, that's quite a gap. Having to be okay with it falling $20 if it falls after earnings before we even start to really um, make money on those puts. That's a little bit tough to swallow. So instead, this time we're protecting some profits up at 160. See where it goes. Any questions, thoughts on these ones? Just wanted to check Apple. So Apple, a nicer, prettier looking bull run, not so jagged like Baidu. But felt the need to get protection back on for Apple up at 150, you can see there. We didn't have anything on. I think we let 140 or 145, can't recall, one of the two before earnings, and we took those off this day when it was holding above that 200-day moving average. We let it run a little bit, but Apple kind of got a pass on their earnings, meaning that they didn't really have great earnings. They lost a bunch of sales from that they would expect out of China. But as I've mentioned before, I think I mentioned this Monday, Tim Cook came out and basically said, yeah, we know we missed a bunch of sales, but China is coming back with a vengeance with their production and their economy, and we expect to basically make all that back up in the next quarter or two. So, crap earnings, not earrings. Because Tim Cook, I think it's just Cook, said expect to make back what they missed over the next couple quarters as China comes back. All right. I also mentioned, I think Monday, the fact that China is not only are they opening back up, they are throwing money at their economy. They're cranking up stimulus. They're handing out checks to people, businesses, which you can see what happened there when that happened to us back in 2020. Kind of to the point for China. I'm sure they've done a lot of stimulus since then to feed people while they've been locked in their home prisons. Sadly, but now that things are opening up, they are continuing to do that with a vengeance. So, all right. We talked a little bit about taking profits last time and when, as far as shares of stock, do we look at taking profits? I'll add here, I'm not going to go through these again, but another time we might take a profit is simply if clients need money. Some of these accounts, you know, they are accounts that people draw from, and of course, we need to take profits from stocks that are profitable when that needs to happen over time. Talked about protecting for earnings. This was actually left on from a couple of weeks ago. We usually go 2 weeks before and go about 6 weeks out, a little over a month at least to avoid some volatility from shorter term options. Forgot to mention, or at least forgot to write this down. Back on up at 150. I'll protect some of those profits simply because with even though they've kind of got a pass above the 200-day got a pass on their earnings, it is our biggest holding. It's at a somewhat of a resistance level, coming off from being overbought. Hard to expect it to really continue to take off because they didn't really do great on their earnings. And the other reason is just that we don't have a lot of confidence in what the market's doing. Yeah, we've been on a nice bull run here, especially the tech stocks, and we can look at our NASDAQ here real quick. Even that has been fairly mixed. Huge run back up for the NASDAQ. But we are at a point here. Some earnings have gone really well. Some have gone really crap. Looking at retail stores and several others. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's hard to have a lot of confidence in where the market is going when it just doesn't quite seem like the market knows where it should go. We had those big jumps up on the interest rate hike. We had another jump up a couple days ago when Powell came and had an interview and talked, and even though he just said the same stuff that he already said, the market went up right after the beginning of his interview, and then kind of petered out towards the end of the day after his interview. Basically because he said, which he's said before, which shouldn't be a surprise, but basically Powell said he said that if inflation still continues to go up and whatnot, that they're going to still continue to be aggressive about raising rates. And he didn't say aggressive, but he reiterated that they're not going to hesitate to keep interest rates going up if what they've done so far isn't quite working. Still are there. Still going to raise rates if inflation doesn't come down, but he's also talked positively about how they are starting to see some parts of the economy having some disinflation, which is his words, which is declining inflation, according to him. And that has been a positive thing for the market. But I guess my point is, it just seems like the market doesn't know where to go from here. And you might be saying, well, Kiev, what are you talking about? Look at this run. And I agree. I definitely agree. We've had a nice run. There's definitely more optimism. We're also coming into a typically crap month of February. Um, After a run like this, where there have been some positive earnings, there have been some real crap earnings as well. Uh, Clearly, the Fed's comments, although they were positive on the interest rate hike and the FOMC meeting, obviously people are still a little unsure as to what to expect. And really, again, comes down to what is going to happen with inflation. What happens with inflation? And that's a bit of stating the obvious, but it kind of seems like the market even tries to forget about it. It really wants, with all the money on the sidelines, people really want to put their money to work. They want those returns again they had in 2020. I feel like that is there. But then reality hits and everybody remembers, oh yeah, we really do need to see inflation come down. And it really hasn't in a large way yet. Not enough. And the Fed has said that and reiterated that. Not nearly enough, I think, is what Powell said himself. So that's that. I told you I wanted to go over Disney real quick. Disney's earnings were pretty darn good. Earnings per share, they had a huge beat on their earnings per share. And let's check out Disney chart, not IDS. We got dyslexic typing here. Disney was up like 8% overnight. It was like up at 120 of pre-market after they announced their earnings yesterday. So you're not seeing any prices there because it was after hours trading. And then they opened up at 118 this morning and really can't seem to hold those gains. Still up, but not nearly as much as what they were before. However, you can see some higher than average volume trading here these last couple days. That is positive. More buying volume than selling volume. So that's definitely good. But you don't ever really want to see a big black candle. You can see a lot of the times these big black ones where they open up and come down. We have open up, comes down, and it just kind of falls. So this one, we're going to be looking at whether or not it's going to hold up here. Still kind of feel like there should be a day to let it do its thing. But let's see, where did we have Disney puts? Let me double check here. 109, excuse me, yes, 109. trading up one at 113. So we ran those a little bit out of the money, and I guess for me right now, just keeping an eye on it to see what it will do. I mean, it was just such a great earnings. I can't quite understand why it's not holding up right now. So it's a story of watching it throughout the day. I assume there must have been some sell orders stacked up there. Some people are going to take profits. This is always going to happen where whenever there's a run, someone got in on some good prices here and they're getting out at a good earnings report and run. And it seems similar to what happened with Under Armour. Obviously, this fell down and didn't jump up, but another case of a fantastic earnings report. They gave good guidance. This does not make any sense. Great earnings, good guidance, huge sell volume, but you take a look back a couple months, also a huge run in the stock. My guess is with this kind of volume here on Under Armour, huge volume on yesterday when they reported. My guess is that some big fund rebalanced, took the opportunity of their earnings to get out of the stock and do something else. Sometimes that happens, unfortunately, and it is holding that 50-day there for Under Armour. Has that amazing, awesome crossover of a 50 over the 200-day. Another one that's kind of a bummer because they did so well and why aren't they going up? But I think we should find a continued run after kind of coming back to hit some support levels and hopefully head back up. So to summarize this, not holding gains for some reason. After let's say my guess is after a nice run from 85 up to 116. Someone is taking profits after a good earnings report. They also mentioned that they're letting a bunch of people go, which a lot of the time is positives for the market because that means they're spending less money on employees. Obviously, there has to be a good balance there. If you see a company just dump a ton of employees, like, a few thousand employees for Disney isn't a lot. They have that, I don't know, 100,000 employees, something. I don't remember. I don't know the numbers of, but tens of thousands. But if you're seeing a company just dump a large percentage of their workforce, that's a worrisome thing. But that's not what we're seeing. They're dumping a few thousand, really not a lot. They're tightening things up, and the only thing I can think of as to why on their earnings they might not be as impressive is because of um, subscriptions for their streaming service went down. I think it was from the last quarter they had less, but they also increased their price for the streaming service, which you'd think a few people would get off the service, even though most everybody's still there and getting charged a lot more. And didn't see that as a huge loss. And it was also less than they lost less subscribers than what was projected. So technically they beat their number there too. And I'll just make real quick. Let's see, great earnings and good guidance. Oops. So looks like a fund, big money is taking profits after a nice run and rebalancing. And that's kind of it. Those are my thoughts. What questions do you guys have that I can answer for you today? Anything you wanted me to take a look at? Any deeper questions? Throw them my way. All right. Nothing's coming over, so I assume you guys are good to go. And I think that does it for us. Thanks for joining me today. And Kevin should be back to his regular programming next Monday. And look forward to joining you guys for Monday's webinar. Take care and have a good weekend. Stay safe.